Me gusta la gente, pero no toda la gente. Me gusta la gente simple, la que no tiene barreras, la que dice lo que dice, cuando quiera, donde quiera. Me gusta la gente humilde, la que no tiene dinero, que trabaja en lo que sea y sabe entregar consuelo. Esa gente es para mí muy importante. Algún día yo sé bien saldrá adelante. Ese día no es lejano, estoy seguro. De la mano marcharemos todos juntos. Me gusta la gente simple, que no mide por un auto, que no vale por la ropa, solo por lo necesario. Me gusta la gente humilde, que comparte lo que tiene, que de poco hace mucho y sin nada se entretiene. Esa gente es para mí muy importante. Algún día yo sé bien saldrá adelante. Ese día no es lejano, estoy seguro. De la mano marcharemos todos juntos. Esa gente es para mí muy importante. Algún día yo sé bien saldrá adelante. Ese día no es lejano, estoy seguro. De la mano marcharemos todos juntos. Esa gente es para mí muy importante. Algún día yo sé bien saldrá adelante. Ese día no es lejano, estoy seguro. De la mano marcharemos todos juntos. Esa gente es para mí muy importante. Algún día yo sé bien saldrá adelante.
Esa gente para mí es muy importante. Hola amigos, un nuevo programa Corazón de Chileno. Esta vez no vamos a conversar tanto lo que pasa en Chile, sino que vamos a conversar un poquito lo que pasa aquí en nuestro país, a los que vivimos en Estados Unidos, por supuesto, y la importancia que ha tenido las elecciones presidenciales y la no sabida resolución todavía de la presidencia aquí en los Estados Unidos con el presidente Donald Trump y el vicepresidente Joe Biden. Tenemos un invitado especial, nuestro amigo Olo Loy, un empresario americano. Ahí lo tenemos al lado. Hola, Olo, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Tenemos un poquito de eco, porque estamos en la misma oficina, entre paréntesis. Así que, hola, pues, vamos a estar más con el teléfono. ¿Cómo estamos ahí? ¿Se maneja un poco mejor el eco? Pancho, avísame si te escucha bien así. Olo nos va a acompañar hoy día a conversar un poco de cómo él ve la situación del presidente Donald Trump. Un poco de la historia de Olo. Él es un empresario americano, tiene una compañía por cerca de 20 años, está dedicado a la seguridad y a la tecnología, y también es según él, el Partido Libertariano, pero en realidad es un republicano de corazón. Y es una persona que le gusta mucho Donald Trump. What I say, Olo, is I introduce you as an entrepreneur here in the United States. Also, you are you call yourself a Libertarian Party member, but you really are more like a Republican and a Donald Trump supporter. And I want to ask you, Jano also is going to be with us in the show. Hola, Jano, ¿cómo estás? How are you?
Bien, ¿y tú? Good, man. Thank you for having me in your show.
So, Olo, let's start a little bit by your background. where you coming from, right? What kind of business you have, and especially the reason I ask about your business is because you've been having a lot of interest about Donald Trump to be as a president because it's been important for the small businesses, and you have a better picture how important it's been Donald Trump influence and the economy in this country in the last 4 years.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in Washington State, eastern part of the state, which is a more conservative, Republican area versus the West Coast, Seattle, Tacoma, that area, which is very, very democratic, changing to socialist, in my opinion. I've been running a business here in the Seattle area for 22 years. It's a network administration business, basically computer networking, low voltage, low Cat 5 cabling, cameras, security systems, door locks, that sort of stuff. President Trump has boosted the economy greater than any of the last four presidents, including both Republican and Democrat presidents. The amount of unemployment prior to the COVID pandemic, as they call it, we were on a trajectory to do great economic growth. We were in great economic growth, and the level of unemployment across the board for all minorities, everybody, was great. I seen an increase of about 25% in my business over the last 3 years that he's been running the company or the country. So yeah, I appreciate his views as a businessman and not as a politician, but as a businessman, and basically came in and started running the United States as a corporation, which we all know it is, which helped small business and large business such as myself grow and expand.
Well, you just mentioned something that I want to bring up to the table. He ran the country as as a company, and we are clear that this is not a company. We are clear this country has to provide more. I'm glad that you mentioned the minorities. The way he's been doing the economy has been help also minorities. But we have to be realistic. This is a country of welcoming immigrant, a country that welcome a better life. Uh, did you feel that Donald Trump is being failed, politically speaking, and the middle class community, and not just being grateful for the business people?
Yeah, I do. I believe Trump has done more for the middle class and the immigrants, like I stated, than the last four presidents. If you just take, for example, on his tax cuts, on average, the middle class family over the course of the last 3 years have been able to take home $2,500 per year more, upwards to $6,000 per family more in tax savings versus paying taxes, which of course helps the small to medium-sized business or just the regular families. They took the corporate tax. Now that doesn't influence me that much, although I am a corporation, but your larger corporate tax, he took it down, I believe it was from 29% down to 15% in corporate tax, which puts more money back into the community, more money back into the businesses so they can expand and grow and hire new employees or whatever that they need to do. When you take money from the community and put it into the government, that, in my opinion, is useless, because government entities usually are the most wasteful entities when it comes to finances and money. And I prefer it to go back into the community, back into my pocket, back into small businesses, back into large corporations, as a matter of fact, that can then grow and expand their businesses and hire more people.
But I hear what you say, and the only thing what I hear is being good in the economy side, which is important in this country, most definitely. But my main concern has always been a president of the United States supposed to be serving the need, the all citizens, and also the great relation with other countries. Um, they had this idea that Mr. Trump, he doesn't do that necessarily represent our country in a good way, uh, international view.
I think that is very misleading from what you hear in like mainstream media and different things of that nature. If you take just the Middle East, for example, in the last 6 months, he's signed 3 international peace agreements with Israel and neighboring countries. That has not been done or accomplished in the last 40 years. Everybody talks about it, nobody does anything. He's moved the embassy to Jerusalem versus where it was. As far as immigration, yes, he has a strict immigration policy. Yes, he sometimes misstates or says things that make people upset or angry with him. But if you actually look at his policies and what he's done, he's made it easier for immigrations to legally immigrate into this country. He's actually deported less people than the Obama administration did in their first 4 years. And the type of people that he's deporting are the people that have criminal records, people that have been deported before and come back into the country and committed another crime, therefore being deported again. I think he's helped international relations around the world. Of course, most people don't believe that, but if you actually study and do your facts, check your facts, and look what he's done with the replacing NAFTA with the new agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the United States, it's more equitable for all 3 countries versus being lopsided towards one or the other countries. Different areas of that nature. So,
Well, with this election, let's go to the election because that's where we start getting the interest to sit down and chat with you because you have a strong opinion about what's going on in this election, about the fraud, about the result that maybe this election going to bring out. Can you mention a little bit about the fraud, how you see that being in the IT business, we can understand it is easily to create a situation like this, right? To uh, mislead the data if you want to, right? Or manipulate the data, right? So can you kind of
I,
explain more about that area? How you feel? What's a fraud? You really think it has been a
I,
uh,
I
bad
believe,
election?
yeah, I believe there's been an election fraud. I don't want to say voter fraud because that's misleading. It's an electoral fraud that has been perpetrated on this country. To start, Joe Biden, who if he wins, okay, he wins, but it needs to be a fair election. His campaign was run very poorly. He was never out and about and campaigning or being in front of the people. And then when he did have rallies, you've seen the dismal amount of people that turned out for it. And we're supposed to somehow believe that this gentleman has broke all records for votes cast for him. And that to me just does not make sense when Obama had the record before, our first black president, which generated rock star atmospheres around his rallies and everything else. And somehow we're supposed to believe that Joe Biden has set all new records on voter turnout and votes that he's accumulated, along with Donald Trump, who happens to be a couple million behind him at 71 million. You contrast Donald Trump rallies in the past to Joe Biden rallies, and you're getting 20,000, 50,000 people at Donald Trump rallies, enthusiastic, get out the vote, everything else. And you're getting 300 people at a Joe Biden rally sitting in their cars honking. Something doesn't feel right about that. The voting software that they use to tabulate the votes in 30 states in the United States, there's 3 different software platforms they use, but the main one, their database servers sit in Barcelona, Spain, They sit in Frankfurt, Germany, and they sit in Venezuela. That's where the servers sit that hold the database of all the votes. You cannot tell me that that doesn't spark some eyebrows. There's also been rumors, and whether it's been proven yet or not, they're attempting to prove it in certain counties in Michigan where 6,000 votes actually flipped from Trump to Biden, a net gain of 6,000 votes that went away from Trump to Joe Biden in the tallying of the votes through these softwares. If you do an audit on a machine and the machine's broken, it's going to spit out an inaccurate count. But you're doing an audit, so you believe that account is right. Unless you do a manual recount and know, I got 50,000 votes here for Joe Biden, I got 50,000 votes here for Donald Trump. I run it through the machine, it comes up with 100,000 votes calculated total, and somehow it spits out 51,000 for Joe Biden and 49,000 for Donald Trump. You're not going to know that unless you know the amount of votes that went into the machine. You understand what I'm saying? So, and doing audits on machines, a machine is going to lie to you. I mean, it's programmed a certain way, and unless you take and investigate the code and everything else, you're not going to know what actually happened.
So you are convinced that somehow we have some kind of data for say the least, and how we collected the numbers to count the vote, and you actually believe that this election is how we supposed to manage this election from now? I mean, what we should do?
It's a very, very good
question.
It's a very, very good question. There's always voter fraud. There's always election fraud in every one of our elections. It's impossible not to have it. Dead people voting, people that move out of the state, get a ballot, cast a ballot. To the degree that it's happened this time, or the perception that it's happened, the size that it's happened this time is staggering. There was a poll that I read that 90% of the conservative/Republican Party do not believe that the election was fair and honest, and believes there was some sort of electoral fraud. To have a population, half of the voting population in the United States, where Joe Biden gets 75 million votes, 76 million votes, and Donald Trump gets 71 million votes, and you have half of the voting population believe that the election was fraudulent in some ways, somehow there was a manipulation there, you lose all trust in the electoral system. I mean, nobody's going to believe the results anymore. If it can be manipulated to that grand scale, you're not going to have confidence in the election system from that point forward. So elections become useless. People won't participate, whether it's favors their outcome or not. It's in my mind, they need to do something here somehow to restore the confidence back into the quote unquote voting integrity for the United States.
We we know for some time, we had this conversation last week actually, there is a plan behind the Donald Trump cases, that he tried to create this environment and stretch the most he can this election to arrive to the Supreme Court, because he feels that being in the Supreme Court, he have a lot of more options or chance to be elected by the Supreme Court in this case, something similar that happened with George Bush and Al Gore over there in the 2000. You still think that is possible? I mean, we have enough case to maybe straight this case all the way to, I think, December 8th, when it has to be finalized by the Supreme Court, or going to the Supreme Court, right?
My understanding of it is, yes, to answer your question, I do believe that is what's going on. I don't think it's what most people think is going on. You get the voter fraud, the election fraud, you get this pushed at you from all different angles. There is voter fraud, there isn't voter fraud, whatever. I think Donald Trump is using that as a smokescreen for what he's actually trying to do. And what he's actually trying to do is to prevent 5 to 6 states from certifying their electorals. Their electoral count, or their electoral numbers have to be certified, I believe it's December 8th, and their electoral members have to go and cast their vote for whatever president was voted for in their state by December 14th. If he can stall that, where 5 or 6 states cannot reach a conclusive decision on who is supposed to get their electoral votes, neither candidate will have enough electoral votes to be nominated or to be president-elect at that point in time, Joe Biden or Donald Trump. If that's the case, according to the Constitution, then it goes to the House of Representatives in Congress. In the House of Representatives, each state gets 1 vote for their president, who they want to be president. And currently, there's 28 states that are Republican in the House of Representatives, which would put Donald Trump at a 28 to 26 margin and be elected by the Congress as the president of the United States. Then it goes to the Senate, and the Senate votes for the vice president of the United States. So we have a 51 to 49 majority in the Senate. We, as the Republican Party or Conservative Party, has a 51-49 majority in the Senate. Therefore, the Senate would vote for the vice president, and logically, that would be Mike Pence.
So, reality, in this case, Donald Trump is hoping to win by the Congress. Get finally the Congress support him to continue to be the president. Which in a way, he won't be elected for the majority or for the population of the United States. I feel like we push him to be a president without the happiness of the American people, or without what the American people want. Do you still feel the majority of Americans wanted Donald Trump be president?
Yes, I do. That's the short answer to that. When you state that you don't feel the majority of the people, you have to first believe that Joe Biden got 74, 75 million votes on the American population. I don't believe that. And that Donald Trump got 71. So he's losing in the popular vote by roughly 4 million or so votes. So when you say the majority of the American population, that there within itself is a false statement, because it's basically 50-50. 50% of the country voted for Donald Trump and 50% of the country voted for Joe Biden, supposedly. I think that we need to make our system work the way it's supposed to work. If these states cannot certify their vote and therefore send their electoral members to the Electoral College to vote for their president-elect based on their numbers, then the Constitution has security features built into that just for these types of situations. And I believe we need to allow that process to work itself out. Nobody's confident in this election that it was fair and accurate, to the degree that all past elections have been. Like I stated before, there's always fraud in an election, but this just seems to be excessive.
You know what? We know this. Well, I didn't know it was fraud. I thought it is the way that we vote here in the state of Washington is open mind and fair. We vote by the mail, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of mail there that get lost, or somebody misuse it, or my compadre get to the other compadre just to change the vote, because I see happen. I didn't do it, but I see happen. So, but we know in our state, and the reason I ask you this, Olo, is because we live in a state, you and me, that we are majority Democrat. We have Democrat Congress, they have Democrat representatives, we have Democrat governor. we are an extremely Democrat state. And even though being a Democrat state, we still see the benefit of having a Donald Trump as a president, even though he has an issue with the government a couple months ago. Do you remember? And we kind of treated Washingtonian as a third world country or third world people. So the sympathy of Donald Trump in this state is not there, right? But even though you being in the state of Washington, you still have great, um, I would say, admiration for him, right, for what he's been doing for the economy of this state.
Yeah, I do. Where to start with that? Mail-in balloting we've had in existence for 20 years, and we have not had a Republican governor, House, or Senate maybe once in those 20 years. So you can't tell me that mail-in balloting, mail-in voting is fair and legitimate, first of all. I don't believe it. There's 3 to 4 counties in Washington state that control all election: King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Thurston County. I believe that the mail-in ballot is the most susceptible to fraud. Point blank, plain and simple. And, where to go? Even though we have been a democratic / socialist state over the last 20 to 30 years, the only reason that this state thrives is because of the business that have generated from here. Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Google have facility here, Boeing, Weyerhaeuser, which all get large tax incentives to stay here. So yes, our state does benefit financially from that sort of stuff. President Trump has brought to our state, expanded the middle class, so to speak. We were getting really close, in my opinion, to have 2 classes: the elite, rich ones in Washington state, and the poor ones. You know, poor to mid-poor to poor class. And I would have fit in the latter, even though I do fairly well financially. But with all the taxes that I have to pay in the state and everything else, it's very difficult to survive here. With federal incentives that Donald Trump imposed, such as the tax relief plan and his tax plan, which put money back into people like me, put it back into my pocket versus putting it into the federal government, I believe that helped out Washington state, and it shows in the polls. In King County alone, which is the major county in Washington state where Seattle is and everything else, support for Donald Trump in this election grew from 2016. He actually got 50,000 more votes in King County than he did in 2016 and 2020. That's not a great percentage with the number of voters in King County, but still it shows that people are actually paying attention and like his policies. If you can come from one of the most democratic, liberal, bordering on socialist counties in Washington state and still increase your vote and your population, that tells me he's doing something right.
You mentioned a couple of times the socialist word. And I know we had this conversation before that you have some kind of fear of becoming a socialist country. Just for the record, for people to know, Olo is married a lady from Colombia. So he does have some influence from South America. And matter of fact, he's been in our country in Chile. He visited Chile at least once. So he has some idea what's going on in South America. Being a friend of mine, we've been close and talk about what's going on with the socialist new movement down there in South America and all the destruction. We chatted a lot about the Black Lives Matter here in Seattle, Washington, and we have a lot of conversation about those topics. And always get down to one point. They all mention is socialist. What is the fear? I mean, clearly we know socialism doesn't work. It doesn't work in any country. I don't see why it's going to work in this one. But there is a level of fear to having a socialist government or some socialist influence in the state of Washington, and eventually with Joe Biden. I understand you have the understanding that he is a lot more socialist president than anyone else that we ever had before. But what is this fear coming from?
Well, like I always say, you get to vote for socialism and be correct one time in your life, and then you don't get to vote again. So even though you may go through the routine of voting, the manipulation behind the scenes and at that level, the fraud, you'll never change the environment. Maybe it's just my roots. Maybe it's just the way I grew up, but I believe, you work hard for what you have. It's yours. You keep it. It's not for the greater good of the community. Yes, I believe that you help out your neighbor, you help out your friends, you take care of one another. I don't believe that it's the government's responsibility to take care of the less fortunate. To help, yes, but to take care of, no. When I talk socialism, maybe I'm not saying complete all out, Fidel Castro socialism, but where the government of the United States or the state of Washington deems it on themselves to take care of every single person in the state with, drug facilitating places, to building houses for homeless, to, feeding every child, to anything of that nature. Yes, I do believe the government has a small role in that, but I believe your community, your churches, your organizations, your Rotary clubs, your, Boy Scouts for that matter, and things of that nature have a larger role in taking care of the less fortunate than the government. When somebody demands you, takes from you to provide for somebody else, that's not virtue. People are virtuous people. They will help out their neighbors. They will help out their friends. They will help out their community when it's their choice to do that. When the government comes in and states that we're going to do this program, therefore your property tax is going to go up 0.2%, we're going to force you to do that. In my mind, that's socialism. That's not people helping people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and actually that's the way it works, and it make it worse. You talk about 0.2% of your taxes. Normally, they take everything from you, and they try to split it, and nobody feel this fair gains, and no one want to be better because they don't have to, right? I think capitalism have a lot of that allow us to grow, to be better, to work hard. Also, there's a level of the social uh, quality or per se, right? Which is be able to go to school, be able to have medical services, be able to facilitate a little bit the opportunity to grow better. And you know better than me. In this state, we have a lot of people that are extremely poor because, for one, the government allowed them to the homeless program, right? But we have one of the richest people live in this state. Actually, believe it or not, we do. Bill Gates and many others, right? They're here from this state. So we're a really diverse state, for say, right? And in that concept, and the reason I bring you that is because, yes, we do have a majority or a big group of people extremely poor to be homeless. And we have a lot of extremely rich people like Bill Gates and all that 1%. But even though those people, the 1%, dedicate to Donald Trump and Donald Trump administration, and they do asking for more social sympathy, for say, right? What do you think we had that from the richest people in our state?
You're getting into a world that you may not want to get into, but it is a way to control the masses. You look at our state, take our state for an example. We have Bill Gates here that lives right across the bridge from where we're at. It's on a good day, 20 minutes to get to his house. You have Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon. He may not live here now, but he pretty much is here. You know, those are two of the most richest people in the world. They could drop $100 million each into the economy of the Seattle area, and they do. But I mean, let's say they put in an additional $100 million in from each one of them, $200 million to solve the homeless problem or to solve this problem or that problem. But they don't. Why don't they? They take their money, they use it in different ways. So what's the point? You know, you're going to have government, you're going to make government take from the middle class, take from the poor to support each other by force without any sort of due process, without any sort of, you know, consensusship, versus Bill Gates and, you know, Jeff Bezos and the CEOs of Boeing. And, you know, I mean, there's so much money in this state. If they would practice what they preached and help each other out and blah, 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 dump the money into it, figure out a solution, but they don't. And it's a way to control the masses, get the people dependent on crumbs from the government, welfare state, Section 8 housing, food rations, whatever. The poor people then become dependent on the government to supply their basic needs for survival. They don't have to work. They got a house for free. They don't have to work. They get food from the government. They get EBT cards that they can go to 7-Eleven and buy, you know, $5 worth of stuff and take out 20 bucks, you know, cash. So you get the people. It's just a way to control the people. It's a way to keep them dependent on government. Therefore, they continue to vote that direction because they're afraid if they don't vote that direction, then these benefits are going to get taken away from them.
You speaking what we all know socialist fear is, to be controlled by the government, to have to ask for a kind of calling card to be feeding, you know what I mean, or to go to get groceries and things. So yeah, I hear what you say. Being, or like I say, before I live in a country was socialist for a long time, for 3 years at least. I had experience to live exactly what you say. But you also mentioned a couple of days ago when we in our conversation, it took Venezuela, I think you say 10 years to becoming what it was, or 20 years, something like that. Do you think the United States, in any way, in any shape, in any form, we going to that direction?
It's possible. I'm not saying we are. I'm saying it's possible. If you look, and bear with me, my numbers may be wrong, but Venezuela was the richest, if not one of the top 3 richest countries in the world. In the world. Tiny little Venezuela, number 1 richest country in the world. And 10 to 12 years after the socialist regime took control, people are eating their dogs for food because somebody stole all the money. I mean, plain and simple. Where'd all the money go? You know, if you're a totalitarian socialist dictator leader, you don't care about the people. Do I believe the United States could get to that point? Yes, I do believe we could get to that point. Will we? I don't know. We have a huge population of people that have guns, and I know relatives, I know friends, I know people that they'd rather die than live in that society. So do I think there's a civil war, violent civil war coming or something? Not necessarily. There is a whole bunch of turmoil and upheaval in here in the United States. If Donald Trump somehow is able to swing the electoral college to where he wants and becomes president for another term, there is going to be tremendous uprising and tremendous mayhem in the streets with Antifa and Black Lives Matter and those groups. You don't see that now when they think Joe Biden's elected. Why is that? Why hasn't the conservative movement, the Republicans, raised up in the streets and started burning things and smashing windows and destroying cities. We don't do that. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in fair, just elections. We don't feel like this one is, and we're not getting riled up by the media and everything else. I mean, one of the things, most conservative Republican people have a strong faith in God or religion of some sort, and they believe this world is just to be here. We're supposed to live in the world but not be part of the world. So what's happening on the world, we just believe there's a different level after whatever happens. So
Well, the reason I bring it up, that's another topic, the religion, that I want to get there, because we have religion issues. But the reason I asking you if you think this country ever can get to that point is because one of the biggest, I would say, explanation that I do to Chilean people is we live in a country that we are governed by the state, by the governor, right? He is actually the one who run our state. And even though we are United States, we're independent the way we do things, and we see it. Like, for instance, our state is extremely Democrat, socialist in a way, but we see other states that are a lot more Republican, more conservative, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, you know what I mean? They're a lot more conservative. And by then, even though the president can be a socialist that want to, they do have the freedom to becoming as conservative they can. Um, so I have a hard time to understand or to get in it that we can become in a socialist country in any way, in any shape. Uh, but you live in America longer than me. You know the American mind. I understand you follow this politics pretty close because we have several conversations, many coffees of that. That have to do with politics, and I have a hard time. That's the reason I want to invite you to understand how an American person can believe that we can become in a social country in any given time.
all right, let me see if I can explain this. So I'm going to start off with, if you take a picture of the United States during the election and you looked at that, they did the comparison of red versus blue, and you saw the whole United States map basically red, as in voting for Trump, and then New York and the West Coast blue, and one or two states spread out throughout that. What you have to understand is that dirt doesn't vote, meaning that, yes, our country is very large in geographical layout, but take the state of Arizona or take the state of South Dakota, let's say, middle of the country pretty much. It's a good size chunk in the middle of the state. The population of that state dwarfs the population of King County, Pierce County, and Thurston County. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the map may look all red, but dirt doesn't vote. You got to have the people in those places to vote. So it may look like it's a red country, but it is and it isn't. But do I believe we can become socialist? Yes, I believe this country could turn into a socialist regime simply because of the control that the Democratic Party or the powers behind the Democratic Party have with their influence on the media. There is no conservative media out there. The only conservative media outlet truly conservative is talk radio. If you want to hear any sort of facts or statistics and get the truth, you need to listen to talk radio. Mainstream television media, Facebook, Twitter, mainstream computer social networks all tend to lean towards the Democratic Party. That's number one. Number two, the Democratic organization or /socialist organization has been working on this since the 60s. They've gained control of our schools. They've gained control of our government agencies. They've slowly altered the course of material that children are learning in school nowadays. You look at the millennials, the 21 to 28 year olds in this country, 50% of them support socialism. outright support socialism. That's your voting block. Do I believe it can become socialism? Sure, of course. You have 50% of a major voting group that believes socialism is a legitimate choice for our country. That's not counting the next generation that's coming up behind them, the kids that are in grade school now, the kids that are in high school now, being indoctrinated into believing that a socialist government is an acceptable form of government for the people without fully understanding what socialism is. You ask one of these kids, what is socialism? You think Cuba's great? Oh yeah, everybody can read in Cuba. Nobody has to struggle. Cuba's a wonderful country. Cuba is an excellent government. Go to Cuba, live in it for a year. See if you think it's that excellent. Realistically, they have no concept of what socialism, in my opinion, over time actually becomes. In the beginning, yeah, it's probably extremely wonderful. Great, woo, everybody's equal. Hey, 10 years down the road, you're eating your dog because there's rations and food and medicine and healthcare and everything. The elderly people get knocked off because there's not enough support in the medical fields, in the hospitals, and the money. So, I don't want somebody deciding whether or not I can have this treatment or not. I want my bank account to decide that. I don't want the government to.
Well, you know what? It's funny that you mentioned since the 60s been doing this, taking the education system, taking the social system, DSHS system that we have here. What kind of the responsibility we have, right? And I say this because I'm a father, just like you. We had kids. We have to communicate this kind of information. I did a pretty good job because they are pretty liberal, or Democrat for say, and I just found out now with this election. So I did a really bad job. But in the other hand, they feel that this particular party or this particular education they get in it, they have a lot to do with people like me. We're immigrant. We are in disadvantages. We need to have a little more the services. So my kids they've been teaching to look at me as an example of, why they had to be more kind, why they had to think more as a socialist, one way to live, to be, even though I told them, hey, I don't need any help from nobody. I can do my, in my own way, and that's what I've been doing it. But they had this idea that what they've been teaching in the school is to support everybody equally. Okay. And they also had this idea that capitalism, be success, be rich is a bad thing. But on the other hand, we've been doing a poor job to teach our kids otherwise. So what do you think of that?
That's our problem. The conservative movement, or the conservative people, libertarians, because libertarians aren't far left. Libertarians aren't socialists. Libertarian, my view is small government, get you out of schools, get you out of, all these social programs, allow the community to handle that, whether it's through churches, it's through organizations or whatnot. Get the government out of it. The government's responsibility is safety with military and fire and police and roads and infrastructure and that sort of stuff. Social programs, no. We're way behind the 8 ball. We're so far behind the 8 ball, I don't know if we can make it up. You have, since the point that a child enters school at kindergarten to the point that they graduate with a master's degree, only hearing one point of view. Capitalism sucks. Republicans suck. You have to be socialist. You have to be democratic. We want to take care of everybody. So I don't know if we can. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to be more diligent with being involved in our children's lives. I have 4 children ranging from the age of 5 to 16. My 8-year-old during the election was awesome. He sat on the couch with me and asked question after question after question as the election was unfolding and who was winning what electoral votes and what's going on here and why don't we want Joe Biden? Why do we want Donald Trump? My friends say that their parents want Joe Biden, and Get involved, explain your point of view, counter the counterculture, if you can say that. Show where their logic doesn't make sense. I mean, even an 8-year-old child and my 6 or 7-year-old child now can fully understand that if you explain it to them in their terms. Look for resources on the internet. Prager University is a great one. I use PragerU all the time. They're short little 5-minute videos. Some of them are geared for the younger age, like my children, and I make them watch it. This is how it's supposed to work. They have no concept of how the other side think. We're just racist, evil people to them. We need to be destroyed. They've never heard the countering point of view. They've only heard one thing. And liberals, I say liberals, but the far left is extremely fearful that if those children and young adults hear a contradiction to what they've been teaching, that it will actually make sense to them. That's why you see safe places on colleges. Conservative speakers get shouted down and ran off of college campuses and can't even talk. Milo came to the University of Washington. He is a gay Republican, most liberal, flamboyant type of personality, which you would think that the far left would love. He's white male, gay, it fits right into their wheelhouse. They would not let him speak at the University of Washington because he was speaking from a conservative point of view. And they did not want their students to hear that. Faculty, I don't know, but certain student groups which have been influenced for the conservative or for the liberal left-wing socialist indoctrination would shout them down. They protest. They wouldn't even let him talk. You take away free speech in this country, you take it away, you have nothing left.
You talk about preaching again, which actually, you know what I mean, preaching. Not just religion preaching. I got that,
But I had to I'll start preaching. I'm here, so I can talk politics all the time because I stay informed. I need to stay informed. I need to know what's going on for my curiosity and to help educate my children and anybody around me. You are a prime example. We have long discussions. I mean, I won't even say the words you said 3 months ago about President Donald Trump, but hopefully I've influenced you to help you see both sides. And we have a mutual, my nephew, I've got to work with that boy. So I got to get Mario back in line, but no, I just need to present a different point of view from what you're getting inundated with 24/7 on the 24/7 news, to the mainstream media, to TV shows, to movies, to every single aspect of your world. You're getting indoctrinated into this, I call it socialist left behavior and belief. So you have to counter that at every possible opportunity you have. And I have been very quiet. I'm a reserved person. I don't speak out. I don't talk to people about that. But as I see more and more of this stuff happening, I'm done with it. I'm going to contradict you and prove and tell you when you're wrong, when what you're believing is so fabricated and illogical that it's not possible. The conservative point and the conservative / Republican people, we're logic people, and that doesn't work. You have to contact them on an emotional level. If you look at the far left and socialism, it's all emotional. They're going to push grandma off the cliff because they want to take away Medicare. You're going to throw grandma under the bus because of something, or it's always an emotional argument where we try to counter with a logical argument, and that doesn't work. You have to counter with an emotional argument to their emotional argument.
That would be interesting to find out those emotional arguments, because you're right, Olo. We have our good friend Mario, your nephew, which I know him well, and all the young people that I've been around, and pretty much everybody's speaking the same way about why we go one way to the other, right? They have this hope, equality, and equality, which yes, it is good to have it, but you as a business owner and myself as an entrepreneur, we know that we have to create the money first before we can start to give it away, right? And a lot of times the socialists spend the money that don't belong to them, which is really easy. I mean, if I had to spend somebody else's money, why not, right? Uh, but back to what I was trying to bring you at the table was what can we do for our kid, for our young generation? This kind of program that we're doing right now help the young kid to listen. Someone just is no part of the 1%, but is the majority of the entrepreneurs, small business entrepreneurs, that we're working really hard and we believe in help, but we live in help in our way, not the government way. So just to close it out, because we have a few minutes before I had to leave, or we had to close the program, what would be the sense of responsibility we have, not just as a citizens, as parents, as entrepreneurs, as a small businesses? What is our duty with our young people? Maybe pay less when I have to work and split it a paycheck with somebody else who doesn't do nothing. You know what I mean? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Or split the lunch for somebody else that doesn't do anything. You cannot teach them. I mean, seriously, what we should do to help them?
Yeah, you got to get involved. I mean, you got to quit standing in the shadows. You got to quit being the reserve and thinking it's just going to work itself out. You got to get involved. You have to speak up when you hear young people speaking idiocy. I mean, when they say something that's completely stupid because they've heard it and it's a talking point, you have to speak up, not in a violent, not in a mean way, not in a, condescending way, but just you realize that that's not true. United States is not a racist country. Are there racist people in it? Yes. Is it a racist country? No. We're the number one destination for everybody in the country, in the world. More Africans move here from different countries in Africa and succeed. They're black people. You can't tell me that you're racist, that we're a racist country. We welcome everybody. We want you to come in legally. We'll give you a hand up so you can stand on your feet and you work, but we're not going to give you a hand out. We don't want to just keep giving you and giving you and giving you to support yourself. You have to get involved. You have to speak out. You have to do things like this. You have to get involved in youth groups. You have to get your younger generations like Mario, my nephew. I got to get him understanding the difference between what he's been fed the whole time to what is reality. Getting him involved in listening to PragerU. He's a very capitalist young man. He works. He makes his money. And he doesn't see the irony of the way he voted. And we have to explain that to him in a language, in an emotional aspect that he can understand, not just dictating and lecturing and, and maybe we do take half of his sandwich away. Say, oh, I'm hungry, I need half that sandwich at gunpoint versus him giving it to me. If he gives it to me, that's virtuous. He feels good about himself. If I hold a gun to his head and said, I'm taking your sandwich because I'm hungry, he doesn't feel good about himself. So get the government out of it and explain that in a scenario that the government is the gun. They come to your head and they say, you got to give this away to the poor people versus coming from my heart to give it away. And that's the major difference. You have to explain that. You have to reach them on an emotional level. Get involved in youth groups, get involved in sporting events, point people to alternative media to learn a different perspective. If they come back and still believe the same way, then so be it. But if they don't, at least their eyes have been opened up.
Well, thank you so much for your time. You've been always involved with the Latin community. I mean, you have me involved in your daily life. We're talking daily, pretty much. At least 2 or 3 times a week for sure. Not just about business. We talk about politics. What is your impression about, really short, about the immigrants? We are a little more conservative, would you say? But the Democrat Party is being sold this picture they're going to help them more. the minorities and the immigrants that come into this country. What are your impression about that?
I've been involved in the Latin community for 22 years. My first wife was Mexican, and then that was 22 years ago or so. So I've been involved in this community, like I said, for 22 years. It's mind-boggling to me how they can completely vote against their beliefs, vote against your core values in the Latin community. The Latin community is very family, very Catholic, very pro-life, very family-orientated, and they continuously vote for the party that is completely contradiction to every belief that they have, only because they want to feel good about themselves and say they're helping other people. The Democratic Party, quote unquote, is the party of the working class, the party of the people that help the immigrants, the party that help the poor. They don't. Their policies actually hurt that group of people. And the Latin community, for the life of me, I don't understand it, how they vote against their core values. Very strong anti-abortion, yet you vote for Joe Biden. You know, you're very strong family orientated, but you support Black Lives Matter, and one of their main directives is to get the father out of the house. You vote Democratic just because that's what you're supposed to do, evidently, but it completely 100% contradicts your core values as a community. It's mind-boggling. My wife is astounded. She comes from Colombia, like I said, Cali, Colombia. She has a very strong family orientation, very strong anti-abortion, very strong, you know, help the poor. And she can't believe to the level that the Latin community supports the Democratic Party, which is, in my mind, like I stated before, 100% against your core values. We have to reach that community. We have to get in there and educate them and show them what you're really voting for and what you're buying into completely contradicts the way you live your life.
Wow. That was a pretty interesting way to look at it. I know we're a little more conservative, but I didn't know that we're that much. Although it's been a pleasure to talking to you, not only today, always. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We didn't give any time to Jano to ask him questions, so we got to do it next time. Jano is going to invite you to his show eventually. Olo, thank you so much for being here today. We keep in touch. Jano, see you later, and that's it for today, because we go to another show in a few minutes. And just to say thank you all for your time. It's a great conversation.
Thank you for having me. Love to come back.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Bye.
Estuvo muy entretenida la conversación con Olo. Siempre un gusto conversar sobre política, especialmente en este país. Queríamos hacer una excepción en este show porque se ha hablado mucho de Donald Trump y aquí tenemos un americano que realmente lo apoya, un entrepreneur, un empresario, un joven talento que ha trabajado duro por mantener su negocio aquí en los Estados Unidos. Amigos, un gusto, muchas gracias, buenas noches. Hasta el próximo lunes con Corazón de Chileno.